One Long Night, written by Raina Young.
It was past 2 a.m. when Clara woke up, her eyes snapping open in the dark. Something had pulled her from sleep. She didn't know what. A noise? A shift in the air? Maybe just a bad dream slipping back into her subconscious. But the silence now was wrong. Too still. Too heavy. She blinked up at the ceiling, waiting for her eyes to adjust. The power was out. She was sure of it. Her fan wasn't whirring in the corner, and without its low hum, the quiet roared in her ears. She didn't hear the fridge humming down the hall or the creak of the house settling. It was just her in the dark. She started to roll over, then stopped. At the foot of her bed, something was there. Small shapes, round, still, nestled just above the end of the blanket. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She went still. What is that? She didn't dare sit up, didn't even move her head. Her eyes stayed blocked on the lumps, barely illuminated by the faint silver of moonlight leaking through her curtain. Those are heads, the thought came to her with awful certainty. Tiny heads, not moving, not speaking, just watching. No, that's crazy. You're just not seeing right. It's dark. Shapes in the dark always look like something else. That's what Dad always says, like clouds. The clouds didn't stare at you. These were staring. She could feel it, like pairs of invisible eyes boring into her from the end of the bed. Children? She imagined pale, wide-eyed children crouched silently at her feet, their heads barely poking over the edge of the blanket. Why weren't they moving? Why weren't they saying anything? And more terrifyingly, how did they get in? Clara's hands clenched into fists beneath the covers. She tried to shift her legs, but they were stiff, frozen. The blanket didn't cover her all the way. She felt cold air brushing her ankles. I should scream, but she didn't. The thought of making noise was somehow more terrifying than staying quiet. What if they moved? What if they rushed up the bed the moment she made a sound? Her heart beat louder than ever before. She could hear it in her ears, feel it in her throat. She imagined it echoing through the room. Still, the shapes didn't move. What time was it? How long had she been lying there? It was so dark, the kind of deep night where even your own room doesn't feel familiar anymore. She wanted to glance at her phone, but it was on the nightstand, and even the tiniest shift felt like it would break the spell and unleash something terrible. Instead, she lay there, perfectly still. What if they crawled toward me? The thought lodged in her brain like a splinter. She kept staring at the small bodies creeping over the blankets. What if they attack? Stop it. Stop thinking that. She squeezed her eyes shut, tried to tell herself it wasn't real. But even in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw them, just waiting. She tried to reason. Maybe it's clothes. Maybe I threw some socks or something down there. Maybe it's just bunched up sheets. Maybe. She opened her eyes again. They were still there. Perfectly still. Perfectly shaped. Please be a dream. But she was awake. She knew she was. And so she lay there. Minutes passed. Hours passed. At one point she thought she might cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Her face just burned. Her neck ached from staying still so long. Her limbs screamed for movement. She didn't give in. She barely even blinked. She just stared. And then, finally, the light changed. Soft gold bled through the edges of the curtains. Morning was coming. Relief should have flooded her, but it didn't. Because in the growing light, the shapes became more visible. Still there. Still at the end of the bed. She felt her pulse rise again, afraid that even daylight wouldn't banish them. What if they didn't disappear when the sun came up? What if they were always there? She watched, breath held as the light moved across her bed, over the blanket, over the shapes. And then, her mind stuttered. The heads had toes. Clara blinked hard. Her feet, exposed, had peeked out from the edge of the blanket in the night. Her toes. That's what she'd been staring at, her own toes. She sat up slowly. Her back cracked, her whole body ached. She stared down at her feet, still slightly numb from the chill of the air. She wiggled her toes and they obediently responded. The little heads bobbed. A weak, dry laugh escaped her. Clara dropped her head into her hands and laughed again, half relieved, half mortified. She had spent hours, actual hours, terrified of her own toes. Of her toes. She lay back again, blinking up at the ceiling, letting out long, slow breaths. A small part of her wanted to forget this ever happened. Another part knew she never would. She glanced at her toes again. They looked different in daylight, small and harmless. Still, she thought, maybe tonight she'd wear socks, just in case.